Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first episode of the season of Conversations. I'm very excited about kickstarting this new season, especially with the panel we have here today, and with also a new co host that is Merlinda. As you might have noticed, the last few seasons, me and Emily have been pulling and pushing this project forward, which has been super exciting. And hopefully, she'll get back to it soon at some point. But for this season, Marlene and I have been thinking deeply about okay, what are new things we want to explore and talk about. So before we get started into this episode, I want to also give Merlinda a little chance to introduce herself as co-host.
Yes, hi. As you can tell, Emily won't be here for this season. I'm only stepping in temporarily as she is helping to raise a human now. Really excited for that. But yes, I'm Marlinda, Automations and AI Specialist at Figma, previously conversation designer at other companies. And yeah, just here to talk about all things AI and conversation design.
Cool. Thank you, Merlinda. And yeah, so the reason we're here today is, as the title of this panel suggests, is there's this topic, LLMs, that has been looming over all our work lives, at least, if not also personal lives. And we have been noticing and have been feeling like, okay, we get it. LLMs are probably like the future of conversational AI. By the way, happy to be challenged on that as well if there's any different opinions. But the question has moved, at least like from what me and Merlinda have been thinking, more and more into the not whether we should use them. Like it's probably true that in some components or some shape or form they are becoming part of our conversational AI applications, but more like how, because there's lots of different ways to go about it. And for unpacking this, we called on the knowledge of these amazing panelists that have real world experiences with this. So maybe we can start and do a round of introductions, starting from Amber, if you want to start.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Amber Prause. I'm a senior digital product owner now at Gordon Food Service. But my job previous to this was a full stack conversation designer. So I was really in the nitty gritty of that. And now I get to be a little more zoomed out in the roadmap and strategy of our agents and chatbots at GFS. So thanks for having me.
Cool. Yam, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Yam Yamarkovic. I'm the CEO of Parlant, which is an open source project that's kind of all about how do we make AI/customer interactions as compliant as possible on the one hand, and also as controlled as possible. Ultimately, the idea of empowering conversation designers and just people who are good at communication to get allow them to get the LLM to speak as they think, and not as just the developers think.
Nicole, do you want to go next?
I love that. Empowering not just the way the developers think. Yeah, my name is Nicole. I'm a co-founder of a company called Delightful AI. We do AI audits for the healthcare space. So for AI in healthcare, we have a lot of generative AI products. Before that, I've got 7 years working on conversational AI products and was a full stack conversation designer as well. And I loved when ChatGPT hit, there was like all this chaos. But then it seemed like, and then all of a sudden it was like the realization, like, oh, hey, conversation designers who've been in this niche space for so long, all of a sudden it's like, boom, our skill set is like made for this moment. We just have to make sense of it. So that's what I've done over the last 2 years, is really make sense of that skill set. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And Lisa?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Lisa Hong. I'm actually the senior manager of AI implementations for Entropy AI. So my team and I lead voice implementations for financial institutions where we are starting to build generative voice bots that combine, routing using the LLM depending on how the RAG rules and stuff are set up, right? So my focus over the last 3 years has been really using RAG, structured workflows, when to use it, guardrails, and so forth. In my past life, I've been in the financial industry for about 14 years. So I've been at Chase, JP Morgan, from savings banks to community banks as well. And I was in the healthcare system, right? Just really working with the frontline staff, trying to understand what type of conversations that they were having. And when I quit my last job 5 years ago, and decided to take a leap of faith in SaaS. I just didn't know what conversation design was, right? So I am extremely honored to really be in this conversation with people that have all this experience. And, I've had discussions with Marlinda. I've stepped into this world, I think about 3 years ago, and I just love it, right? It's not the technology, it's not just, how everything is set up. It's like I love showing and explaining how a conversation should really take place when somebody goes ahead and calls into a bank, right? And that's just not happening now. So, trying to make some sort of movement here.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, I think it's great to hear like we have so many different expertise coming together, and also yeah, like really a bunch of experience. And maybe to get us started into this topic, I want to start like really basics, like with a question on like what to you qualifies something where for LLMs are actually the right tool. So what for you, like looking at a problem makes you think like, ah, yes, I could use an LLM to fix this problem versus just hypey ways of using LLMs for things. And also, like, if any of you have examples of like what are things where you're actually using LLMs and can speak about any of these applications, that would be awesome. Who wants to start? Yeah, do you want to go?
Yeah. So I think, looking at it from my perspective as primarily a developer, what an LLM is a statistical machine, right? A statistical model. But its strength is that it's very, very big. So it can contain a lot of statistical correlations. And it's been trained on a lot of data, which means that it works really well. The more your task has to do with unstructured data, and maybe demand unstructured outputs. So a different way of thinking about it is the less precise you know how to be about the task you need to do, and like its spectrum, and that's where LLMs really shine, I think. And over time, even like you can use LLMs for something, but the more you understand about the problem that you're solving, or maybe you break it down into small problems, that's where you can actually start migrating away from LLMs. But they're kind of always there in the background to help you understand new data that comes in.
I think that's a really nice way of looking at it too, just this idea of like how precise you need to be, because in some cases, I remember in the past I worked on fintech products, especially in the payments and banking space, where we had so much regulation around what we could and couldn't say, and our risk teams were like, well, you cannot mess this up, right? And it was like, oh, maybe we need to let's not rely on an LLM, and certainly not a generic LLM kind of out of the box with no RAG or anything like that. I think really knowing that use case. I know as conversation designers, we talk about this a lot, like know the business case, know the use case. That is even more important now in a time of great hype, where you have a lot of leadership saying things like, we got to make this AI. We got to put an LLM in there, right? Because that's a reality for a lot of organizations. Their leadership is under pressure to show that they are doing something with AI. And that's a lot different from maybe if you came from pre-ChatGPT places, where it was like we were kind of this weird team doing things where we could just build things and there was no pressure. There were pressure to deliver, but not just kind of like top down. And so what I see happening is that a lot of teams are quick to make a prototype, but the reality is there's such a gap between the prototype and production, and that ability to really define the business case and say, like, this isn't, define your risk, right? And how you're using it is going to shape whether or not you use an LLM.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but like it's not it's not just like, can an LLM do this task? Because like there's probably a lot of instances where it can, but like, is your problem uniquely suited for an LLM or not? And you have to be like really clear on that problem and really clear on the goals on it. Are you trying to generate something new? Do you have to sift through like a bunch of unstructured data? Does it involve like a back and forth conversation where that context needs to be very key and clear throughout? Those are probably all good cases for an LLM, but if it's like a small, simple, very defined task that you're trying to solve for, we probably don't have to go all into LLMs there. So yeah, just echoing that sentiment there.
Yeah, I'd always start with the problem statement. So, Amber, I really do appreciate that someone does share the same thought process. But if it's structured, compliance-driven, being in the fintech world, right? And just the question of whether or not a natural language understanding those rules will go ahead and apply better, right? So I usually try to filter out the hype by asking, will this improve accuracy, reduce friction when members or customers are calling in, and really what type of experience is it going to provide, right? So it's really just understanding what the problem is and breaking it down to then determine what the right tool or what the right path is. So
And so then kind of to follow up on that, like it sounds like, I mean, yes, like definitely, I think we are all in this space now when it comes to AI, where leadership are like, we need to turn on the AI, and it's like, you don't necessarily need AI for this. Like a deterministic flow here would be great. We don't need to use token for this. This is, why are we spending money on like a generative welcome message? So with that,
I think there's also too, it's really interesting depending on the company you're in, because I've been in now a few where it's like they may not even know that you were using AI like with NLU. They may not even know that exists. There's so much like focused on getting one out. So you'll see sometimes a duplication of efforts. And then, or just you do have the mandate, we have to use an LLM. So then it becomes like, I think, well, how does this fit into our system? Are you starting from scratch, or are you working within your existing system? That's another kind of tension that we have too in this period.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Yam.
I mean, we're seeing that too, where companies might already have an NLU framework. And then they're like, well, can we replace the old models with LLMs for NLU? And they do that, but it's kind of like, the way I think about it is like LLMs are really expensive, right? And a flow chart can only achieve so much containment, conversational flow chart. I mean, it can be very well designed as far as like, thinking about the happy path of the conversation and the messages and all that. Still, just by the very fact of its structure, any conversation designer knows this and is painfully aware of this limitation. It's very limited. And trying to just replace the NLU part with an LLM, I always think of it as like, you bought a Ferrari, but now you're just riding to the supermarket that's just 5 minutes away from your house. So you can say you have a Ferrari, but what are you really using it for? I mean, if you just want to use a Ferrari, which a lot of companies, at least in the past couple of years, with all the hype, that's all they wanted to do. Hey, look, we have a Ferrari, but they're just driving to the supermarket and back.
Yeah.
I think it's very important for like when it comes to education, right? I know that we all have these conversations amongst ourselves and with our spouses or friends, or even for me, my 12-year-old, right? I have long-winded conversations with him about this, but how are we educating our customers, our internal stakeholders, for them to really truly understand what the difference is? It's not just the hype, right? It's really just what it can offer. Where's the ROI? Where's the value that it brings? Whether it's you using it for your personal day-to-day, or you going ahead and building it out for your customers, right? And I think in my industry, at least, or my experience from healthcare and fintech at this point, like education is key, right? Just informing them, having them acknowledge, giving them the knowledge, having them understand what it really is, right? The question that I got a couple of times a couple of years back is, what is an LLM? This sounds like it's coming. It's great. What is it? They don't even understand it, right? Like my 5-year-old walks around in my living room saying, oh yeah, the AI is going to take over the world. That's what my teacher said. And I was like, does she even understand any of it? I don't think so. So it's educating, individuals that are not really informed well. And I think that's super important as each of us go through our daily challenges with running your own business as CEO, as a senior manager, whatever the case may be, us all being in that conversation design AI space. How do we educate our customers? How do we educate each other, ourselves,
Absolutely.
to really understand and speak that message?
Yeah.
And Lisa, I just want to build off one thing you said, which really resonated with me.
Kids?
And yeah, that was about how, the purpose of using a tool,
Mhm.
when we're talking about AI conversations, is how to reduce friction for customers.
Yep.
And what's interesting to me is that, so obviously, the old rigid flow charts, they encounter, some upper bound where you can't reduce the friction any more than
Of
a
course.
certain degree. But I find there's also a lot of problems with LLMs, only it's different types of friction. Starting from, of course, things like trust issues. But
Yep.
even if we put that aside and we assume that that is solved in some way, LMs, in my opinion, are such bad conversational partners, conversational communicators. Like I used, I'll tell you offline, but I used some company which you know about. Like I used their LM agent, and I asked a simple question about my billing invoice, and it came up with so many long messages one after another that I literally had to scroll up 2 pages just to see where it started rambling. And of course, 80% of what it said was not relevant to my inquiry. And that's a lot of friction. And that's
Absolutely.
right there is when I escalated the conversation to a human representative.
Yeah, as long as it wasn't one of my bots, I'm okay, Yam, but I'd love to know who that was.
I think we all do at this point. Well, oh, can we go play with? For me, I'm like, oh, I want to go play with this one, see what it does.
No, but great point. I totally agree. I think the biggest challenge that we run into when it comes to well, not going into too much detail, is really transferring to human, right? We're creating these bots for our customers. We're trying to contain everything. So, go ahead and transfer to a human. But that piece is something that I have not understood yet, right? How do we control or help human behavior, even if Yam went ahead and got all his questions answered? What if he still wants to click on transfer to an agent? What do we do then, right?
I remember having a conversation about, this is more of a tactical thing, about that entire process, about the talk to a human, and do we just offer a button that there's permanently, right? And that solves it, but then we have the people who are like, I don't want to talk to a chatbot, talk to a human, right? And so it's just interesting, like how one of the things I see right now is dealing with more visual elements. My background is very much in the AI UX. I'm not necessarily doing the visual side of things. I'm not working in Figma as much, and as say like a product designer, right? And so much of the UX is through flowcharts on the back end, prompting, things like that. And it's interesting if you are on a team and start partnering with product designers who are thinking visually, we now have this kind of other element as part of the conversation. How does the conversation then interact with these other pieces? Or if you're working on an LLM embedded in a product, not necessarily a chat window, right? You have these other elements that come into play. And I think that's almost, it's like next level of conversation design, at least in my space, because in the beginning, I just used a chat box, and after ChatGPT, it became other parts of the product,
Yeah. Or like now having dynamic buttons all of a sudden, and like things can get a lot more fun in different ways. Maybe
Yeah.
there's still a conversational component somehow, but it's like shown differently.
Yeah, and if you look at our ChatGPT tools, Claude tools, or general purpose LLMs, they're conversational, right? They're conversational products, but they're also connecting to data sources, which adds a whole nother element too, right? We talk about RAG, but these are essentially data sources. And it's super interesting, a conversation designer, to think about, okay, what does that add now to what I have to design, right? If I'm adding emails, or if I'm adding my Google Calendar to this, what does that mean for the conversation?
Yeah.
More complexity. That's what it means. And
Yes,
I love it.
Lisa. All the complexity.
Yeah, and kind of like going from this topic on like, okay, we start connecting a lot of things like to these LLMs, and a lot of things are happening. Like how, tying us back to the whole topic of this panel, is like, how do you decide when it's time for, I don't know, a feature or like a component of a feature to be just like, okay, I'll keep it simple and I'll just go with prompt engineering and tweak around with the prompt for this specific step or specific action and so on? Or when is it that you say like, okay, actually now we need to pull in RAG, now we need to pull in like different agents that somehow we're orchestrating with another agent and get into that situation? I would love to hear like what are your thought processes on like when do we pick each different kind of modality for LLM usage?
So I'll start, I guess. I think there's something that would be great and almost kind of romantic, where in the world of I think any type of creative world, which includes design as well as engineering, there's like this romance around the concept of keep it simple and stupid, right? And sometimes we want to believe, and sometimes it is true, that if we keep things very, very simple, that's when they really work best. Unfortunately, it could not be farther from the truth with LLM. So, I mean, the reason why people go to the lengths of working with RAG and orchestration layers and all of that, grounding, context engineering and all of that, and paying the extra cost and latency is because that is only starting to get things to work a little better for them. So I would say, I mean, realistically, for me, I go with prompt engineering when it's like when I use an LLM as an assistant or a co-pilot, where it's okay if it gets it wrong, because I'm going to decide what I take from it and what I don't. But I think in customer interactions, it's a real problem. If you're working in assistant or co-pilot mode, you may trade off some accuracy for speed or cost. That's how I see it.
I think it's going to depend. I mean, I'm going to build on that. In the real world, we want it to be like keep it simple, but quite honestly, I'm getting the requirements from product, or it's coming from leadership most likely. Like all the projects were direct from leadership that was like, you're using an LLM, or it's going to be an agent, and you're like, you don't even have the basics. So a lot of times as a designer, you're already in it. And so my job is to make sense of it. So I come in and I start with the questions, and I like to use, Google has an interaction design framework for AI products. And I was looking it up to find it. I'm not finding it, but I'll drop it in the chat when I do. And really it's simple questions like, what are we building? What is it supposed to do? What is it not supposed to do? Where are the risk areas? Right. So essentially, as the designer, I'm going to get everybody on the same page and break the assumptions, because what I find is stakeholders are coming in from all different places with assumptions. The developers have different assumptions than product and design. And so my role really was to bring those together. And even on the audit side, I'm not on implementation anymore. I'm on the audit side. I'm still bringing it back to the clients and saying, hey, look, these are my initial questions. And oftentimes they haven't thought about it. And that from there helps to simplify things. No, that doesn't mean we're not going to just go RAG out of the gate or all these data sources, but it does get people on the same page. So then we can move to prototyping. And prototyping, that is actually what I love about generative AI, is we can spin up that prototype and I can say, okay, this is what your answer is going to look like without that data. It's not good enough. It's too generic for our customers based on what you want it to do. Now let's talk about the data sources that we need to use and see how that impacts the answers. So it's really this iterative approach that from a design perspective, we're kind of used to, but traditional software development teams do not work that way. They're far more linear. You have very defined functions, right? And so we're in this period of transformation on our teams on how we do that kind of work. But designers, conversation designers, you already have that mentality to kind of go in and make sense of what we're trying to accomplish and get everyone on the same page. And then from there, you can start to experiment.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. And to put a little more structure, it's like that crawl, walk, run approach, like, right? So make the prototype, do it with zero shot prompting, and here stakeholder, here's what becomes of that, right? If we're trying to go fast and maybe cheaper, like, yeah, that's definitely an option, but here's the output of that. And there, the more you build on that, you realize quickly, like, okay, if we added some examples in for few shot prompting, we're getting a little bit better, but, and I'm going to bring it back to, it really depends on like what is the problem you're trying to solve. Ask the questions, like you said, Nicole. Make sure you're truly understanding what the output is from the stakeholder. And sometimes the zero shot prompting will be enough. And so I think it's always good still to start there, because obviously you're going to get more expensive, more complex the further down the approach you take. But sometimes, and most of the time, I feel like it does end up with, all right, we need our data smushed in with this technology to really get the outcome that we're looking for. So
back to that education, stakeholder education. That's
yes.
a lot of what we do as conversational designers. I think too that visual helps. We spend a lot of time in meetings talking about what we could do, and I found that even more so after ChatGPT, I do far more visuals, not just like flows, but like defining what things are, so everyone understands. Just on a fig jam, right? Just messy on a board, so people see the pieces out there because of that complexity. Right, because it does. So the more you can put down visually and show to your stakeholders, so they actually have something concrete, I find the better the conversations go.
Lisa, did you have any thoughts on like what is your approach to picking which approach works best?
I think I'll sound like a broken record. But I mean, mine just goes back. I mean, I'm writing notes right now, but mine just goes back to understanding the use case. What is the problem statement? What is the elevator pitch that the customer is giving to you that their problem is, right? And everything sort of circles back based on what I'm like writing down. Everything sort of just circles back is like, what are we trying to solve before determining what tools or what path we're going to go down, right? People are super quick to go and say, oh yeah, LLM's the next best thing. But again, it goes back to education. Do you know what it is? Do you know how it works? Right? Then it's like, oh, AI is the next best thing. AI is everywhere. Great. Do you understand it? Do you know what it really is? And again, for some people, these conversations might be very elementary, but I've been having a lot of these conversations, including with my friends that are very smart. So it's been a interesting journey. But again, problem statement, what's the problem? What are we trying to solve? Then determining what the next steps are is the path I follow. So
Yeah, I don't think like maybe the hype is quite settled yet, but I'll say like after the past year and a half, I think everybody is realizing like back to the basics, right? We already know the process. We've been doing it with any technology, right? The process is the same. Know your user, know your problem, and solve it from there. The LLM is another tool we have now, but it's not a solution. So.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. I mean, I think that was the thing that kind of became clear. Well, not clear. We always knew it, but when there was a lot of hype, people were like, we're not going to need conversation designers anymore. Like LLMs, ChatGPT.
I heard that.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, there are a lot of considerations that come into building an experience when you think about the integrations, when you think about security, legal coming in because of certain use cases like in banking. And Lisa, the banking industry is so lucky to have you, because that is the one industry where I'm just like, absolutely not. I am not going in there. So for people who are voluntarily going in there, I'm like, good for you. But with that, like, it sounds like we've all been in this like kind of experimenting phase. Has there been a moment where like an LLM has solved a problem that you weren't trying to fix? Was there like any unexpected wins as you were kind of starting off?
I don't know if Nicole, you were going to
go for it, Amber. No, go for it.
I was going to say, so we took our business took the approach of really starting internal. Where can we gain internal efficiencies with LLMs, and before we kind of go the external route. So learnings there. And I don't know if it was, I would say it was an unexpected win. So we built a digital assistant for our sales reps to help them. It's an assistant through Google Chat. It's something that they can access anywhere. Our sales reps, they're always out and about meeting customers, and there's a lot of rely on internal support to answer questions quickly. They have a ton of forms and documents and contacts and everything to remember. So all in one spot for them. And we were super focused on like, this will be very efficient for our sales rep. And that was true. But the cool part that we kind of forgot to take into account was once we kind of started socializing, this was really like our first LLM agent that was assisting an internal team. And once other teams saw this, they were kind of being proactive and coming to us like, hey, we get this question from reps all the time. It'd be really cool if we could free up our time and also make them more efficient. So I think just the impact that it had at an organization level versus just the team that we were kind of aiming for efficiencies was unexpected in a great way.
I was on a like a more of a hackathon project once, and our audience, our customer base was small business owners who were learning finance and accounting. And one of the things I got to do was use an LLM for teaching and coaching. It's actually one of my favorite use cases for LLMs, not just for that group, but in general, right? Teaching skills. And I was able to put together this prototype where we used customer data to personalize their kind of learning plan about their business. And it was such a cool use case. It was like a surprise. And, we tend to think, especially I'm coming from like call center background where like, I'm saving millions of dollars by reducing calls and stuff like that. And here was this really interesting use case that maybe doesn't directly correlate with, customer savings, but it's an engagement tool, for your customers. It is an added value. And it was such an interesting project to work on. And I absolutely loved the results, right? And we tested it with some users and they were like, this is amazing. Imagine if we had like more of their data, what we could do. So there's a lot of conversation that started from that as well. And I thought that was such a cool use case. Sadly, when you work for a giant organization, you don't always get to do those projects, move them forward. But it was really one of the most interesting use cases out there. And I think sometimes it's fun to see the creative side of what's possible, because if you are a conversation designer, you already know, like you're already thinking about how users interact, right, with AI. So if you've ever had kind of an idea, wouldn't it be cool if we had a chatbot that did this? Like LLMs give you that ability to play and try that out.
Yeah, for sure. Lisa, yeah.
Hard for me to say, honestly.
Me too. I don't know, like a moment where the LLM solved a problem that I wasn't even thinking about.
Yeah.
I don't know if it solved the problem. It probably did, right? The challenge that I would go through drawing out boxes and lines to build out conversations using voice flow, right? Like, what is that next question, next thing that we have to be prepared for the user to go ahead and ask about, right? I think that has gotten a lot better for me, where I can just start speaking to the LLM and it can build out my conversations, and I can then tell it like what to do, what not to do, and no, I can't do this, right? So and like ChatGPT, my husband hates this, but there is like a speaking version of ChatGPT where you press the button and it starts talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, I would just say girls if Yam wasn't here, but oh my God, that is so amazing. Like I'm just having full-blown conversations on what a true conversation is, right? So I think that it might be a problem that it solved for me. I just didn't know it was a problem until it came into play. So
yeah. A comment on that voice option of ChatGPT. It sighed. I asked it a question and it goes, and I'm like, excuse me, this machine just sighed at me. Conversation for another day. But
you guys should have a panel on now the voice models out there, because they are like 11 Labs blows my mind.
Yeah.
They like, and I don't work on the voice side, so I'm always curious, like how voice is adapting to these models. Little suggestion.
It's changing what we think is okay coming from a voice, like interacting with a machine.
I have a question for the panel.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit controversial. I think that real-time voice is not a good interface. I think like I personally would much rather do like exchange voice messages. That's what I do with people. Like for me, and it might be just being a CEO. No, but I did it even before. like just getting on a call and it's like, yeah, let's talk now. I hate that. I either like talking to somebody in person or on video. Um, Otherwise, like I want to exchange messages, and sometimes I don't like typing or reading, so I use voice messages all the time. So personally, I'm really hoping that more companies would start implementing not real time voice, where like the AI said something and it's like, hey, can you repeat that more slowly? And like you need to figure out how, when not to interrupt it. Like with voice messages, you can pause, you can replay, you can respond whenever, you can think about your response, you can respond whenever you have time. So I kind of wish more companies would look into that versus real-time voice, which is maybe more like the human interface we're used to. I just think it's not as good. I'm really wondering, I know it's a controversial opinion. I'm really wondering what you guys think about that.
I mean, I can't divulge so much on this call, but it's been a pretty damn good experience designing voice using LLM and prompting. And
Ooh.
again, total, like, I wasn't even in tech all my life. I was in sales, right? Just having conversations. But once you are able to understand how to not control, but guide it and come up with those guardrails, it's so amazing. And I get where you're coming from. Yeah, I'm like, again, I'm sure my husband would rather send me a voice message than talk to me sometimes because I go ranting off on other stuff, right? But for a lot of places, including fintech, right, it requires a human touch or something close to it when they're closed, right? So I think those voice messages do have a certain use case, but I don't know if I would say that I'm opposed to it. I love it, right? And I will go back to JP Morgan and try to pitch it if I can, right? Exactly the way that I'm implementing it. I think it's going to be amazing when other companies really start understanding how it works, finds great designers like yourselves, right, to go ahead and implement and show them, how it's supposed to be. But my experience, it's been freaking fantastic so far. That's all I gotta say.
So I'm also like wondering, even if we put the AI issue aside, just
Mhm.
what you think is a better interface for service, a live call or asynchronous voice message exchange?
For service, it should be a live call. It should not be messages going back and forth constantly, right? Waiting for that message to come into my phone, downloading it, pausing to hear it, right? It's just not. I mean, I've been in service for a total of 18 years, and having that human touch, being able to express the empathy over the phone and have them feel it when they're not in person, it's crucial having conversations, not just with bots, but with a voice. So if you think about it, take someone like my mother. She is 70 years old, straight from Korea. She's been working in this country for 40 years. Definitely speaks a lot of Konglish, Korean and English. If she had messages coming back from her banker or even her dry cleaner next door saying that your dry cleaner is ready, she's going to be like, what the hell is this? But when she's in person or she's on the phone, she has the opportunity to sit there and say, can you repeat that? I didn't understand it. Do you have a translator? Or if she says, and she's not fluent in English, but she's fluent enough. But she'll say like, oh my God, my daughter's making me go crazy. She's having me watch her kids, like, and the banker would empathize with them. And that's what I want my voice bots to do, right? When it's after hours.
So I actually agree when it comes to older generations. But what do you think about the newer generations?
I love it. I wish my TD bank would do it, to be honest. I really can't stand the number dial pad feature. And maybe it's because I'm designing it. But when I go ahead and introduce this to my customers where they have a better understanding of how it's supposed to work, because organizationally, you can't really expect everyone to be on the same page. There are going to be some people that don't like it because they just don't understand it. But when you educate them, show them, teach them, have them touch and hold, they fall in love with it, right? For my age, and they're my age, right? They're not that old. I'm 42 years old just to sit there and put it out here, right? And I love it. And I feel like I need it. But even thinking about in healthcare, not just fintech, I got family that was very ill. what if they don't have anybody to talk to and they want to call and see what the next steps are, what their next appointment is? If we have a conversational bot that is running with LLM, how can we not allow that conversation to happen to put that person at ease? So voice is super, super important. I mean, we could have more conversations later, but
yeah, I think it goes back to like the actual use case, what subject we're talking about, because this was actually a point of contention on between, I would say, me and leadership on some of the areas I worked in, and I would have to go back and say, like, look, this is not something a chatbot can solve, and neither could voice.
Yeah.
And this was specifically if you've ever done your accounts, or in accounting, it's called reconciliation, where you are reconciling your end of the month, expenses and earnings and bills and all of it, and it's messy. And this is not a skill people naturally know, and most business owners don't want to do it, right? So this was something that consistently ranked at the top of like challenges to solve with AI. But the reality is it was so personalized to the user and the context of their business, right? The AI doesn't have that context. And so there was not enough data to be able to train an AI to really understand this. And in the end, this was just going to be a subject that a human needed to handle, going back to when do we hand off for humans and as a designer. So I think while the question is interesting about using it, and I think it has its place, but again, from the design point of view, it's like, well, then we should define when we use it and when we shouldn't. Right? And who our users are. Are they going to be, people who don't have experience with this technology? I think with voice too, it's so good now that you can't tell the difference.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's ethical issues there. If people are thinking they're talking to a real person and then find out later that it wasn't, and they were sharing their health, problems, what is the impact of that? Now, I don't know, but.
Lots of considerations now, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I agree. It does depend on the use case. I mean, I see little stuffed animals now with like a machine inside powered by ChatGPT talking to, and the parent can program the prompts so that it answers their kids in certain ways. So, I mean, and the voice is great too. And the latency is not bad. Like you can have a real-time conversation with a little teddy bear now. It's freaky when I think about it, but like, I mean, Labubus are a thing. So this world just kind of makes me, I don't know, everything is open.
There's Lububus with ChatGPT in them. I didn't see this one yet.
Not that one. Well, I'm just saying.
Give it time.
Yes, give it time. It will. Someone is doing it for sure.
I'm sure there's someone powering Labubus with ChatGPT.
Has to be.
Just combine it. It's there. I know someone's thinking about it. Yeah. Julia, did you want to jump into the next question?
Yeah. Though, if anyone has thoughts on Labubus with ChatGPT, please feel free to bring it back here. I wanted to ask a question actually, because we talked a bit about like cool things you notice, like using LLMs or like unexpected wins from them. But also to draw the full picture, I also wanted to ask if there's, on the other hand, like limitations, especially ones that you feel like you wish more teams were highlighting and acknowledging these limitations up front when it comes to LLMs.
I actually just gave a talk about this earlier today. So it's close to heart. Here's something interesting. We actually do work with a pretty large bank, and they run like millions of conversations every month. So, and this kind of goes back to the issue of prompting and actually also voice. So the big question with LLMs is not how accurate are they in terms of how often do failures happen. For example, nobody's getting 99% accuracy today, which means that like 99% of the time it doesn't fail. Nobody's getting that. You'd be lucky to get over 90%. And yet, even if you did get 99%, if you're running 10 million conversations per month, that's 100,000 new incidents per month. And the big issue with those failures is not that they happen, it's that you don't know how severe they might be. It's very, very hard to put boundaries ahead of time on what the impact of an LLM failure would be with a customer. And I think the vast majority, I would say virtually, unfortunately, like virtually every team that's working with LLMs today does not think, I mean, they're aware of the problem a lot of times, but they just have no solution for it. So they're kind of building optimistically. And I think that's a big reason why products don't make it to production in very large organizations, or when they do, just like happened with what happened with Taco Bell a few days ago, where they said no mas to their AI drive-through experiment. It is a big issue. So it's not simply getting the accuracy up. It's how can you guarantee that the critical errors cannot happen. And it turns out that if you can do that, then you can deploy, but it also comes with certain trade-offs. And if you only care about optimizing everything that you care about, then you won't be able to make the kind of sacrifices that can actually put your product in production. So I would say that's the main thing for me. It's thinking about how can I not just build and work on this great technology, but how will this get approved to go into production in a few months?
For me, I think it's just like the illusion that it's so much simpler to work with LLMs than traditional ways of building chatbots or anything. It's like, yeah, it's just like you wave this magic wand and it's done, right? It's like so much faster. And I think that it's really just shifted from like, you might be able to get something up and running super quickly, but then the tail end after that, it's like the intensive prompt engineering, the cleaning of data, like the data part of this, like we haven't talked about yet, but we all know about that. And then the constant human verification, and you get into hallucination, kind of like you were talking about, Yam. But yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing for me is like the concept and the thought process that like, oh yeah, like if we pick an LLM, it's just the whole process is going to be easier and faster. And I have not experienced that yet. So that would be the thing that I would call out that I wish more teams would acknowledge is like, this isn't going to be simpler. It still might be the better solution, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be simpler.
I got a +1 to that because that is exactly my experience on every single project with an LLM, because there is a push to get them out there. And a lot of teams, engineering teams say, great, we will just, the volume of analysis that needs to be done once it's out there, LLMs require a lot of monitoring. You cannot just ship it and forget about it, right? And I think that's where, once again, we go back to the traditional software development process. Is not focused on analyzing the results, coming back and iterating. That's more of an ML ops process. And so it right now we see a lot of teams that are implementing the solutions are software development teams. It's not necessarily a conversational design team, or right. So we have kind of this problem of thinking in this mindset of it's just like any other software that we produce, put out, right? And that's just not the case. So the monitoring and the need for human oversight in after it's in production. I can't tell you how many software engineers have said, don't worry, we'll just automate it with another LLM. Well, guess what? That automation is also dependent on their prompting skills, how well they know the problem space, and so on. And that is a huge gap, quite honestly. And a lot of times they're evaluating a single answer, but they're not evaluating a conversational flow, right? With context. And that is a huge blind spot, right? Not to mention the data piece. I love that you brought up the data piece. I'm not going to get into it. Yeah, there's another topic for you. What do we do about data and LLMs?
I have a follow-up comment about that. I mean, has anybody here on the panel have any experience where someone's like, turn on the AI, let's do RAG, and yet the help center content wasn't basically optimized for AI? And how
has anybody ever encountered a situation where it actually the help desk was good? I have not encountered that situation yet.
I would say, I mean, I might be biased, but I will say Figma's help center documentation actually has, given us a really good foundation for our answers. But for the companies that don't, especially I know companies who've been around for a while and they weren't thinking about content strategy when they started writing their help center articles 20 years ago, and they haven't updated it or the infrastructure. I mean, when ChatGPT first came out, there were some companies I heard they basically shut down for 3 months and rewrote all of their help center articles. Not everyone has done that, but yeah, like every company is kind of in a different phase when it comes to trying to update their help center and their data sources. Wondering if anyone can speak to that, and yeah, what's your journey been there?
Well, I mean, it's first of all, I think what you just said is really not obvious, and there's a lot of credit that should go there if you actually have a help desk that's nice and clean and consistent, right? Because the problem with most help desks is that you may have a lot of information in there, but a lot of the posts, the answers are partial. The LLM will quote partial information, or it won't know like which is more recent or which is like good for one context and not for another. It's so hard to parse a help desk properly. So I would say like it's one thing to just connect the help desk. It's a whole other thing to see that customers are getting good response from that they're happy with. If you've managed that at Figma, I mean, you guys should do a press release on that. I personally have always encountered this issue in everybody that we work with and talk to. It's always a challenge for sure.
Yeah, I'm not saying we have zero hallucinations. Let me put that out there. But I will say, exactly, I will say that our results percentage-wise is actually pretty good because of the way that the help center has been built and organized. Props to the content team for that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's a data engineering problem, and it's a content engineering almost, and it's really interesting because we don't think about it that way. Others hear RAG. The technology is RAG. Therefore, if I do technology, it works. And it's just not the case. It's data. And there's so much work, as Amber had mentioned, on that data side. And we're not just talking about some numbers. We're talking about full articles. I found that, we had duplicate content, right? We had errors in the content. We had content that was customer faces versus internal facing. And that is not always necessarily in the right buckets, right? When engineering was accessing them. We had content that was out of date, quite honestly, but it was still live on the site, right? Mm-hmm. And the bigger the company, the bigger your help desk, right? The bigger your help content. And so there's really an opportunity there for conversation designers, maybe are heavy on the content side, to really move into kind of that space and the data space and look at that, because the teams need it. Create your own job. Get out there.
Yeah.
You know how in the beginning, people were saying part of the reason why we won't need conversation designers is because, we already have millions of records of human calls. We'll just train an LLM on that.
Yes.
That didn't work. Because even human conversations are not great. And when you automate stuff and you see the machine working, you don't need to worry about its emotions or it's getting fired or something. You just say, this is not good enough. And so when you train on most data, whether it's conversations or help desk articles in most places, it's just very low quality data and it's not good enough. It's very far from what the top executives saying like, we have all the data already, just train something on it. But it's so far from reality.
Can I just tell you, I have to leave. Unfortunately, I have to drop early for another event. But I'm going to say this to all the conversation designers out there who have heard, we don't need them anymore. That is so far from the truth. We know that. But the fact is, we have to position ourselves. We're not just conversation designers. We're AI interaction designers. Our title doesn't really matter. But that's part of that stakeholder education. And I know it gets tiring, but it's once you've built that trust and shown them what you can do, like, you're just making their lives easier, the product teams and so on. So keep going. Don't let that kind of stuff derail you, because we're more in demand than ever in these products. So with that, I have to leave. So
thank you so much for joining us, Nicole.
Thank you all. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you. Is in the same spirit, anyone else wanting to leave some parting words before we wrap, like on LLMs, like something you'd want other teams out there to know if they decide to get down this route?
I'll do my plug at the end.
I was just gonna, in the spirit of staying true to my broken recordness throughout this, it's like the tagline is going to be fall in love with the problem, not the technology. If you get real clear up front, don't let LLM and the technology lead you to the problems. Find the problem, figure it out, and then you can be very sure going forward if an LLM is a solution or if it's a tool that you've been using for years.
Love it.
Guess it's my turn. This is really hard to be put on the spot. No wonder Yam said he'll be last. So LLMs are super, super powerful, but they're definitely not magic, right? And I want to make sure that everybody understands that. The real value comes when we understand how to go ahead and pair them with strong workflows and conversation designs and people like us that understand what the true conversation should look like and what type of guardrails we should have in place, right? So I'm just going to continue to build voice experiences that our customers enjoy having, and that's it.
Yeah, thanks also, Lisa, for bringing forward earlier the point on education and how that fits into our role. I think it's super important and like super important for us all to remember this, since like I know a lot of our audience fits into the bucket of people who should be doing that education. I just want to underline this one as well.
You're welcome. Thank you.
For me, I was at an EY event today, and I talked to this investor there, and I told him about what we were doing, but I didn't yet say, how we're kind of doing well and everything. I was just like some guy for him with an idea. I didn't really introduce myself yet, which I like to do, by the way, in these events with these types of guys. And he asked, so what do you do? And I said, well, we allow people to gain a lot of control over how LLMs interact with people. And he looked at me, he's like, and who said that was a problem? And then I said, well, one of the largest banks in the world, including like 11,000 people on GitHub, which is nice to be at a place today where, now there's something I can say back to those things. But I would say if you're a conversation designer, you've always had a very big problem of explaining, just kind of being in the position of justifying what you do to engineers and in some cases to executives, right? And one of the things that we wanted to do, because we have one of the greatest designers on our advisory board from CDI, by the way, but one of the things we wanted to do after talking to so many designers was build something that would empower them. But we also knew that it's incredibly difficult for designers to get engineers to care about what they have to say, unfortunately. And so what we did was we started with an open source project called Parlin. That's our project, which has all the heavy duty stuff that engineers like, and it is open source, but it's actually kind of subversively built from the ground up to enable a lot of design work on top of it. So I would say if you're a designer, whatever you use, and there are black box solutions as well, try to kind of lure your engineering team to choose something that would end up enabling you. That's what I would try to leave you with.
Yeah,
sure. Thank you for that. Well,
yeah.
I mean, with two panelists gone and two remaining, I guess we should call it the end. We didn't even get through all of the questions we wanted to ask. I feel like there's just so much content around this space. Maybe we'll do a part 2. I don't know. We'll see where the hunger is to continue this topic. But thank you so much, Yam and Amber, for joining us today.
Yeah, and thanks also to the other 2 panelists that came on. I definitely think we'll need to do some kind of follow-up because there's so much left to discuss on this topic. And for everyone who's wondering and like missed a part of the panel or anything, we're going to share the recording. All of the recordings from like also past seasons are on our YouTube, so please feel free to go back and dig in our catalog. We have quite a few now, so if you're needing some information on how to do things around LLMs, AI, conversational AI, that's a great resource. And yeah, thanks again for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. Offline? Offline already?
And I think we're still live.
Oh.